Thank you, Rod. As always, you pull it together. You are the secret sauce.
Well, I appreciate that. But like, honestly, and we'll start because this has just been like one of the coolest things I get to do, Cathie, is you, especially in the team, have trusted me to like curate some of my amazing, crazy, out there friends. Not you guys. You guys are my, regular friends, Steve, Paul, and Jesse. But honestly, to be able to platform this and have the discussion, and you said it best, like this, there's a like big time convergence happening across AI, energy, and Bitcoin. And I think today we'll actually, honestly, we may even touch on energy side, Steve, with the mesh networks and a number of other and the compute stuff that we were just discussing before we hit record. But I want to take a step back and just say, welcome to the Bitcoin Brainstorm. Cathie and the ARC team, we've been doing this for 2+ years. Today's topic, we got Paul Itoi, we got Jesse Posner, as well as we got Steve Lee from Spiral. We're going to focus on Bitcoin and AI. I don't know where this conversation is going to go. All I know is I've been in a rabbit hole, and all I've been doing is in my Buzz terminal and just vibe coding and working with the team. So I've pulled my head up to now have this conversation with all of you guys. So I'm super excited.
And you know what? It looks like you've been vibe coding, Rod. It does. It does. There's something different. So we're going to bring you back to human life.
Thank you. Thank you. Maybe, Cathie, I'll start it off with you, just because from your perspective, actually 2 years ago, folks want to go to, I believe it was episode 2, and we had Paul on with us. We were talking about Bitcoin and AI. We were talking about machine-to-machine payments. We were talking about a number of different things. One of the areas, from an investor standpoint that I can't grok just yet is, are we looking at this in silos like Bitcoin, energy, AI, or are we truly looking at this in terms of a convergence right now? Like I mentioned this Buzz platform, which we'll talk about, but I literally don't know which way is up right now. And it's kind of amazing as well as scary, if you will.
Yeah, you're capturing the sentiment in the equity market. It's become very unstable around these convergences. And, I think last year when Elon Musk, it's probably 9 months, I'm going to say now, he posted on X, I think my companies are converging more than I even expected them to. And then, of course, soon thereafter, SpaceX bought XAI. And now there are rumors of SpaceX buying Tesla so that it's completely integrated back to the chip, into the chip with Terafab. And I think the reason this is feeling so chaotic is because really for the first time, well, in my career, we are seeing a number of S-curves hit their inflection points around the same time. And I think that's a big question, though, especially when it comes to robotics. But, and so you have S-curves feeding S-curves and, leading to the possibility of super exponential growth. So not just, growth at like Amazon for 25 years at roughly 25% compound annual rate. Nobody believed that was possible in the day. So that's exponential growth. Super exponential growth is possible as these S-curves really feed each other. And so I think a lot of the questions out there are around, okay, are we ready for prime time, especially in robotics and humanoid robots, I think being the biggest question. And that's what we're wrestling with in our brainstorms and our day-to-day meetings.
I'm going to come back to that one, especially with your experience in Austin at the robo-taxi.
Yes.
And I'm going to come back to everybody, and I'm going to put my money on Paul, who has a humanoid in their house right now. But
the closest I have is a vacuum cleaner, which I advise my wife we do not buy these robotic vacuum cleaners. And then I had the great satisfaction of sending her, I think, a Hacker News tweet that the company we bought it from did in fact get hacked, and so someone pulled the certificate off of one of the vacuum cleaners, and then it compromised all of them. So not to throw any shade on autonomy or anything like that, but I think it's a sign of the jagged edge of intelligence here. So you can't vibe code vacuum cleaners, it turns out, from a security standpoint. But to echo what Cathie says, I mean, from 2 years ago till now, I feel like the timing of things is tough to call, but were we going back and looking at what we talked about, agent to agent payments, the protocols are going to happen. I'm dying to hear from Steve about Buzz, and Rod, your experience with it has kind of taken over my corner of Twitter, at least. But I think Buzz fits into a larger movement that's echoed in, say, Anthropic's revenue boost, which is there is a incredible demand for enterprise intelligence, and I think which drove a lot of that revenue number. So people using systems like Buzz and Goose, Ramp's doing it. This is an area I've followed pretty closely. And so this redesigning of the company as intelligence, taking the form of systems now, going open source with Buzz. Jesse, what you're doing on the personal server level, I actually think that applies to corporations as well. You're starting, I mean, if I'm getting that correctly. And by the way, Jesse is a former lawyer. I just learned this. I didn't need to dox you, but I think you've been so helpful to me. I know Jesse as a super advanced cryptographer. I emailed him out of the blue about the Frost multi-signature protocol that he's been instrumental in leading. And then I found out he's a lawyer, and it just blew me away that Normie can reach Jesse's level. And I would love to, some point before the end of the call, for Jesse, you to talk about Frost multi-sig, Buzz, agents using cryptographic signatures and identities in the enterprise. And then what happens with multiple approvals. That can get very futuristic down the road, but just to plant the seeds for the stuff that I'd love to get out of the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the other convergences we're seeing between all these technologies is also the convergence between technology and law and politics. And I think as Bitcoiners, we're very used to seeing technology through that lens, that the way politics is being expressed in the world today, like the right to privacy, we get that through cryptography, or the right to speak. We get that through decentralized networks on Bitcoin. Rights related to economic liberties, we're able to embody those in engineering systems. And increasingly, our ability to think and speak and self-determine in the world is going to take place along the lines of how AI is built. And whether or not it's decentralized, whether or not it's open source, whether or not it's private, is increasingly going to shape the contours of the political and legal systems.
With respect to convergence, I can view it through a few different lenses. One is Block Inc., another is Spiral, which is the group I lead, and then also Presidio Bitcoin, because I'm a part of all three, and I'm seeing that convergence from all three views. Block itself, of course, has been a big supporter of Bitcoin for almost a decade now, through funding and supporting Spiral and open source, but also through commercial products. Block also, for about 5 years now, has been developing Proto and Bitcoin mining chips, which touches on energy a lot. And then I think the world's starting to wake up to see that Block is doing a lot in AI as well, but it wasn't like Jack woke up in last December when the models got better and decided to pivot the company to AI. Block's been working on AI for 4 years now. And I think the world's just starting to see some of the fruit born from that. And then Spiral, we made a big shift, or expansion, I should say, this year, from not only working on open money and Bitcoin, but also open intelligence. So our scope has expanded to AI. The core Goose developers have moved over to the Spiral team. We're still working on and supporting Bitcoin in every way that we've been doing. So there's no change there, but we're also doing AI. And we see a lot of opportunities for the two working together. So we're happy to talk about that. And then Presidio Bitcoin, we do a monthly AI meetup now called Builder. We started that a year ago. PBJ, I'm usually in this studio doing a weekly podcast, and we've done 75 episodes now. We cover AI and tech just as much as Bitcoin, but all three of us are big Bitcoiners. And PB is hosting an open source AI summit in September. So, and we're even having conversations about, branding of PB, right? Because it's more than just Bitcoin. It's Bitcoin and AI. And we've observed there's a lot of value overlap between a subset of AI, at least, and Bitcoin in terms of the importance of openness, permissionless technology, and privacy and things like that. Things that are near and dear to the hearts of most Bitcoiners. Well, it turns out there's a large group of folks in AI that care about that as well. And I think Jesse and I see that a lot at PB. And PB is starting to become a hub for AI in the Bay Area as well, for people who care about open models, local models, privacy, et cetera.
To both Lorenzo and Cathie, I think like Steve nailed it, and Jesse alluded to it as well. Like there's just this natural at the company level and the community level, this kind of convergence of communities that are interested in the technologies, AI, energy, and Bitcoin. However, it's about intelligence, permissionless money, the permissionless energy to source as well. And these communities are just naturally gravitating to places like a PB, like a Bitcoin Park, and other places. And it's just absolutely phenomenal to see. I'm curious, maybe from your guys' portfolio or your guys' investing side, are you guys seeing that kind of as well on the back end?
I'll just start and then hand it to Lorenzo. Absolutely. And we've set up our teams in such a way that they don't follow sectors or industries or sub-industries. I mean, some firms have 5 consumer analysts, 5 healthcare analysts. No, we have organized our research by technology. So tech specialists, they are sector generalists, sector and industry generalists. Most importantly, though, they are collaborating with one another because these communities are coming together. And we learned it very well with our Tesla model, which were 3 big communities. Autonomous vehicles are robots. That's 1, robotics. They will be electric. That's 2. That's going to be the cheaper energy source. And they will be powered by AI. So 3 platforms converging at the same time, 3 S-curves. And we have to have those analysts working together on the models, which is anathema to traditional Wall Street, traditional sell and buy side. And it's one of the reasons that there is so much confusion out there, because these analysts, the way their responsibilities are organized, are not set up to understand the way the world's going to work. So I think there's got to be a wholesale change. So Lorenzo, do you want to take it from there?
I was thinking about kind of Bitcoin and AI, and in many ways, they're very, very similar, right? Like they both use compute and energy to disintermediate trust, right? Like a Bitcoin on the monetary side and AI more on knowledge and research, right? They have core principles that I think, brings kind of the 2 communities together. I think where it's but they're also very different, at least for now, right? Meaning like Bitcoin is all about like open source, transparent, open. And so far, what we've seen is, I'm sure we'll talk about maybe closed and open, Rod, and some of those conversations. I know many people here are working on that, so I'd love to get their take. But it seems obviously that a lot of the models today and the AI tooling that we use is, not private, is closed source. And so I think from that perspective, obviously, open source is coming in a big way, which I think we're going to talk about. But it just reminds me that that there's the Venn diagram is huge between Bitcoin and AI in general, but they're also different in some ways. For us, one of the question for at least on the payments and like monetary kind of asset question, and the machine to machine economy is Bitcoin kind of going to be viewed as a store of value also by these AI agents? Or is it going to be more a payment to transact on top of? And I think, we obviously, humans kind of have an idea and obviously the use case over the years, but it's just something that I think we still need to figure out. And I know it's super early in kind of machine to machine and AI agents on chain. But I think this is just like kind of a fascinating question to think about kind of long term.
This reminds me of the early days of cloud, when financial institutions, healthcare institutions would have nothing to do with public cloud, and built their own data centers. And now, of course, more and more are understanding what public cloud is and is not. So we're having more of a migration. I think they will coexist for a very long time. And then the other thing to add to what Lorenzo said, you mentioned Bitcoin, Lorenzo, but I think Block did something very interesting recently in terms of introducing stablecoins into the equation. And, practically every time we have have had conversations with Amrita, who's the CFO of Block, which is, full disclosure, a position in our portfolios, we asked about stablecoins because that does seem to be at least another kind of bridge to the future that we're dealing with here.
Let me ask Paul, and maybe Steve and Jesse can jump in on this. I personally believe Bitcoin is a store of value and a payments technology. But do you think now with Cathie, Block now introducing stablecoins seem like they're well far ahead on the payments side? Do you think that's a knock against Lightning and Bitcoin on the payment side? Or do you think it's just like letting the market mature as it relates to humans to machines and humans to humans, as well as machines to machines?
In terms of the question of stablecoins, which one would you love me to?
Stablecoins more, and then on the Bitcoin side to see if is Bitcoin losing market share, maintaining, in terms of top of mind for folks?
Yeah, I guess I don't look at it as a total pie where, stablecoins have this much and Bitcoin has this much. I look at it as more just a spectrum as we go into the future. I would say that, we do micropayments to people around the world. That's how we got started. We have 20,000 people registered earning small amounts of Bitcoin to do data labeling and tasks. This was a crazy idea back before the whole current AI age. And so whenever I survey or ask someone, hey, what would you prefer, Bitcoin or Tether? And they would say Tether every single time, and as a Bitcoiner, I would say, well, why? And then if you dive in, you learn that, this is their unit of account. I believe that unit of account comes first if you earn in that currency. So everyone says it starts as a store of value, then it became some medium of exchange, and then unit of account. I believe that it goes opposite. Unit of account is driven by the denomination that you earn in. So whatever you earn in, when you convert your time and talent into money, that is how you think about your unit account. So that's one statement about Tether and about how, the adoption of a monetary good can happen. But I would say what Tether did really well, and what people in the US don't understand, and I didn't understand, honestly, initially about stable coins. If you have no extra income, let's just say rent is due on the 1st. I cannot survive a 15% dip in the Bitcoin price if my unit of account and my earning is in Bitcoin. So I have $100 in Bitcoin. My rent is $90. My food's $10. There is no room for 15% decline. I will be on the street. And so Tether, I believe, really does a good job of that, is serving that role of stability for someone who does not view this as a store of value. Now, trying to explain that to our friends here in San Francisco or Park City, where I am, and all this stuff, is like, well, what are you talking about? This is an investment in my Robinhood app or whatever. This is just a little thing that I'm playing with. But to the people where Tether is popular, what would I tell that person to do? Oh, use Bitcoin and just survive the loss like a true orange pill believer? or pay your rent, So there's just this reality. But I wanted to touch on one thing what Lorenzo said. I didn't want to cut off that question, but I think that we can look back. I mean, thinking analogies is obviously dangerous, but with Bitcoin and with AI together, I think there's so many lessons. Steve, you and I talked about this when we were together. Someone needs to do this, but look at how Bitcoin mining went from CPU to GPU to ASICs. It's finding power. If you look at currently with the models, you look at inference, you look at distributed inference, and then the work that Jesse's doing, not your keys, not your coins. If you don't have control over your own interactions with these models, then your actual thought process is being exported both as an individual, and I think Block's work, clearly you guys recognize this too. I do not want to export my weights to an Anthropic or to anyone.
Totally.
So how we operate, what you learn from agentic traces, what the person doesn't know. So you expose all your weaknesses in broad daylight to the provider of your models. So don't export your weights as a corporation. Don't export your weights as a human being, because those traces are permanently stored in your third-party provider. And the models today can extract a certain amount of intelligence, but you don't think that hard drive with those traces is going to be available in 10 years with the models 10 years from now? Hey, let me go look back on what Jesse was thinking back then. He clearly was missing this entire area of technology. What an idiot, So you'll be able to remine all of these traces, and look back at your younger selves, but you've already given that up. There is no getting back. It's the equivalent of, I did the 23andMe tests. I outed my entire family branch of our genetics, and then it got hacked by someone. Now it's all gone. Like, you cannot put that genie back in the bottle. So I would say that the lessons learned with Bitcoin, I think the work I hope that Jesse you're doing is saying, okay, here's an alternative for us to manage a cold storage, just like a Bitcoin device, like the BitKey stuff that you guys have done, is I want to go ahead and store my information, my family's information on our own personal server. And I think this applies directly to companies. Look at, Jensen's first post on Twitter is all about corporate sovereignty over your data. So open models, preserving that option. Not everyone will choose it, but I think it's hugely important to have that choice out there. Corporate, individual, we both need those choices.
At least for me, like, it's really hard to think about like machine to machine economy. Like, in the future, one of the things is, I think listening to for me at least, like, why are people not using Bitcoin for payments and kind of day to day? And obviously volatility is number one, but like, the reality is, like, your purchasing power goes up over like Bitcoin has been going up, right? So it's actually not a bad idea. But obviously, like, you open your wallet and you see a coffee worth like 0.00001 bit. It's just like very hard in terms of kind of UX UI. And I think, like, humans, like, a lot of the good products we use is just because it has like good human UX UI. You know what I mean? And so if you think about that, is like, and a lot of the tooling that we use, like wallets, like these long bits of like contracts and addresses, like, for us, it's really difficult. Like, it's super difficult because you're pretty dumb, right? As
I'm
humans.
dumb.
It's but you
100%.
give that, like, a lot of the infra that we've built, like the cryptography, the public addresses, for AI agents, like, it's super easy. It's very easy. And like, they, if they see a price in Bitcoin or in USDT or like, it is something very, very easy. So I think in terms of thinking about that, in the future, like, things might look very different, and like UX UI might be completely irrelevant for some of these applications. And also, the thing that I would say is, obviously USDT and USDC are great right now for many reasons, for kind of human initiated transactions and assets owned. But like, for AI agents, like, if you want complete permissionlessness and like you want something that is yours, like, they can see they're the issuer, so they can freeze whatever they want, right? And so I would assume one of the things I'll take into account, like, very seriously, is like, hey, can they freeze my portfolio or not? And like, their Bitcoin has really like a card that is really hard to replicate in the kind of digital economy, if that makes sense.
Very good point. I'd love to follow on that. The way I look at stablecoins versus Bitcoin, stablecoins is just an evolution of fintech. It's a better existing rails and way to send and receive the dollar globally. Bitcoin is the revolution and trying to change the underlying money and asset. So the latter is going to take a lot longer. And a lot of us here have been working on this for a decade or more. I used to call it a marathon, not a sprint. Now I've learned my lesson, and it's more of an ultra marathon, not a sprint. But I actually would paint an optimistic picture. So I think with the growth of stablecoins, I think you have to recognize it and acknowledge it. You can't just like, poo-poo it. But at the same time, like prior to stablecoins, Bitcoin was trying to compete with the dollar in the existing financial system. It's still doing that. It's just just call it TradFi 2.0 with stablecoins. Also, if you look at the hurdles that Bitcoin has, there are many. One historically has been user experience, and I think that has improved dramatically. I now would say that user experience even for humans is much better. Even the problems that Lorenzo pointed out, that's been solved in a lot of products already. Second is taxation. So like in the US and many countries, you're supposed to pay taxes if you buy a coffee. And that's pretty absurd, right? So if you don't have to pay those taxes or deal with them, you're going to be predisposed to using dollars. And then there's just been the protocol and development tools themselves have improved tremendously, and I think that's now on par. But there still needs to be good reasons for people and volatility was already mentioned. That's a big barrier that remains. But there still needs to be a reason for people to use Bitcoin over dollars. I think it's hardest to convert people who have existing behaviors, like going to buy a coffee every day. But new behaviors, such as AI and machine payments, and within Buzz and paying for peer-to-peer inference and the brand new experiences, people are not already using dollars for that. It's a brand new experience. So if it is delivered to them using Bitcoin payments, and it's so much easier now to onboard people and get people with a Bitcoin wallet experience that can be delivered directly through these AI experiences. I think that's going to be ripe for Bitcoin adoption moving forward.
Rod, do you remember one of the Bitcoin brainstorms we did was with Alex, who described stablecoins as humanitarian for this moment in time where, yes, it's mostly emerging markets and they absolutely cannot take a hit, a 15, 20% hit at any time, versus, moving into a world where, they're over that, they're participating in this technology revolution, their wealth is increasing, and that's when also the transition to Bitcoin will more likely take place, at least in the emerging markets.
Totally. And that was Alex Gladstein from HRF, who's just been absolutely crushing it on a number of fronts. So I don't know which thread I want to pull on. I want to pull on the self-custody of intelligence and money on Jesse. Actually, let's pull on that one. Jesse, Paul kind of teed you up a little bit. Could you maybe continue going down that one? And then I definitely want to come back to the Buzz aspect, because Steve, I think you absolutely nailed it. I think we're obfuscating away Bitcoin, and it's just money that is just being used in these communities, in these agentic experiences and such, that just people just naturally just use, if you will. And it's going to be absolutely phenomenal. And I could maybe share a few of my experiences with that. But Jesse, if you want to just maybe explain, because I'd love to learn a little bit more about your work as well.
Yeah, I think AI is changing the incentives around privacy and self-custody in really important ways. So with a lot of these adoption debates, one way we try to persuade people to use these technologies is from like an ideological or an ethical perspective. You should use this because it's more private, or you should use this because it's going to protect your freedom. But it's very abstract and theoretical, and it's difficult to convince people to do that, especially when there's a major sacrifice involved. And so I think, like with Bitcoin payments, if there's a volatility problem or if there's some UX problem, that's going to impede the adoption of these things. And so a lot of the Bitcoin community and cypherpunks and people who really care about decentralization and privacy and freedom technology have had a hard time with this mainstream adoption because of the way the incentives are wired. But because of what's happening with AI, this is giving us an amazing opportunity, whether to go to the consumer or to go to small businesses or enterprise, and make the case on an incentives basis that privacy matters, self-custody matters, because we've never had machines that can betray us on the level that an AI can. You've never had an AI you've never had a computer that's giving you legal advice or medical advice or financial advice and can betray you in its advice with a conflict of interest. So traditionally, these kinds of relationships, these are fiduciary relationships because loyalty and confidentiality is paramount to the economic value of the relationship. And now that is entering into our relationship with the machines themselves. That if I can't trust the advice, then the economic value is not there. And like we saw with Anthropic, where they ended up walking this back. But if you were using their AI to build a competing product or to do your own fine tuning and training, they would silently sabotage your work without even telling you. Or you have situations where Anthropic ends up competing with their customers. So they have a big partnership with Figma, and then they turn around and build Claude Design. So you're 100% dependent on these systems, and you can't trust them if you can't control them, if you can't verify them. And as an individual consumer who's gotten really fed up with big tech and isn't enjoying the current experience of technology with doom scrolling and addictive mobile devices, coming out of that experience, there's understandably a lot of resistance and a lot of fear that AI is going to make all of this worse. And people don't trust the big tech companies with the data. It's actually pretty shocking how low AI adoption is in the consumer market in the United States. And so we have to get the benefit of these systems, we have to have assurance that we can share all our most sensitive data with them, whether that's from a consumer perspective, private medical data, private thoughts, or from a large company perspective, it's intellectual property, it's strategies, all of that information. If an individual or an entity does not control that, then they are taking on an existential risk that they can't afford. And you're not going to get the best experience out of the AI because you're going to end up self-censoring and you're going to end up not giving it all of that data. So that is changing things where now all of the sudden people are realizing I need to have my own AI that runs on my own hardware where I can verify it, where I can control the data, where I can decide for myself the values embedded in this AI, and my ability to be effective in the economy or be effective politically or effective in whatever I'm trying to do in the world depends on my access to an intelligent system that I can trust and that I know works for me and isn't working against me.
This happened a while ago, but we were discussing it this morning in research. Meta basically is scraping everything that its employees do all day, every day, all the data they're creating in order to improve its own models. I don't know how many other companies are doing anything like this, but, I think when people hear that, they're like, whoa, what's going on here? And I think there is this lack of trust, as you say, in big tech and in Meta. That's a good example. But I have been surprised at how willing consumers have been to share their data for a free service, or accept advertising. Do you think their incentives? I understand what you're saying. Will they be strong enough to overcome that? Hey, I want free all the time.
I think it will, because the incentives around that, the stakes have not been as high as they are with AI. So maybe with Facebook, you share your social media or your emails go to Google. But with AI, it's becoming a second self. It's becoming an extension of our own mind. And the level of information that's going into the machine is at a level of intimacy, of sensitivity, that is a whole new category than has existed in the past. And there's also a greater desire for ownership and control that we haven't had in the past. So people really don't like when their AI suddenly changes out from underneath them. You log in the next day and you're like, is this the same AI? It feels different. What happened? Or knowing in the back of your head, like, maybe this AI is trying to sell me an ad. What is its loyalties? Who is it obeying? That degrades the experience, because this is when we get to that individual consumer level, it's a very personal relational experience. And when you have a conversation with an AI that you know is your own and is private and belongs to you and that you can trust it, it's actually a much better experience.
Yes.
Whereas in the social media game, in the pre-AI game, the private experience is a worse experience.
Yeah.
And you're having to sacrifice the UX. It's not as useful. The network effects aren't as big. But now suddenly with AI, the better experience is the more loyal experience, is the most private experience, is the experience where I feel like this belongs to me. Nobody can take it from me. And so that, I think, is going to change consumer expectations, along with all the negativity around big tech. That creates like a ripeness to go to this market and say, you want something else. And in order to really get the amazing AI experience, it has to know your medical data. It has to know all your private thoughts. It has to have access not just to one account, but all of the accounts, the whole life context. And are you going to trust big tech with your whole life because you saw what they just did with it? That's going to be the argument we can bring to the consumer and say, I bet you want an AI that lives in your own home, that is yours alone, that is totally private. I think that's something people are going to be really excited to have.
I see two fronts on changing behavior. On one side, as you mentioned, Cathie, people tend to choose user experience and cost. If it's free or cheap and it works really well, it's simple, even though they might say they care about privacy, they choose, if there's a trade-off, they choose price and simplicity. So on the product development side, we need to make sure that there's a good UX and it's affordable. Unfortunately, most human behavior, you need to experience pain to be able to prioritize in your life to switch your behaviors or switch to a new product. And so I think, unfortunately, I think people will feel pain with the kind of problems Jesse just mentioned. Hopefully, it does not impact that many people negatively. And so you don't have to experience it yourself, but you learn it from your neighbor, family member, a friend, or someone in your local community before masses of people switch to more private-oriented products. But I think that will play out over the coming years.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of time before some high-profile person's entire ChatGPT archive leaks. Is just one account takeover away, one click away, and everybody on the internet trolling through all these really embarrassing things. And this is inevitable. It's going to happen, and that is going to wake people up. And so, but I think on the other, there's the carrot and the stick. So the carrot is the fear part. And then the stick is the incredible experiences that the AI can give you when it works for you. Because the other thing that's happening with AI is it's taking over the interface layer. So like the way things are going in the future, you won't go into apps, you won't go into browser tabs. Your AI will be the interface into your digital life. And it will also create the view on demand. So what that means is with social media, your AI goes and pulls in the social media feed. You're not having to scroll the feed. Your AI goes and grabs that data and it shows you what you want to see on your terms, and it filters out the stuff you don't want to see. And that is an experience that you can only have when you control your AI and you own it, and there isn't a tech company trying to get you to engage or click on something. And so that's the carrot side that we haven't had in the past. In the past, we've had the stick side of do this or else. But AI is also emerging is creating unique, incredible experiences, or Buzz is another example of this, unique experiences that can only happen with open source AI. And I think that's going to be the difference maker of finally getting the mainstream to be engaged on cypherpunk values.
So we're kind of dancing around the open, all of this hinges on open models continuing to improve and being available and being legal. And there's been a lot of discussion recently around this topic, but We're not going to have control. We're not going to have privacy. We're also not going to have cheap access if it's just one or two companies controlling all of this.
And one other way to think about it, and at least how I'm thinking about this on the pain side, for the first time, we'll go into Buzz, and maybe Steve, I'll pass it to you to explain a little bit about Buzz to the audience, and then we can go from there. I think Paul mentioned agentic traces. We're putting a lot of sensitive information and conversations and our intelligence there. There's the enterprise, the mid-size, and the small business. And then Chamath's been talking a lot about this. You trust Anthropic, you trust OpenAI, they're going to come up, and I think, Jesse, you mentioned Figma. Now, we're just going to launch Claude Design. XYZ company, we're just going to launch this. Don't worry, it's okay. And then all of a sudden, you're competing now against this juggernaut that is compounding their intelligence at a clip that, is unimaginable. So for the first time, when the team on board, we were using Mattermost, which is another open source alternative. And then we went fully committed to Buzz, which I don't even want to call it a Slack killer. It's so much more than that. And it is our human and agentic community platform internally right now. And we're going to open it up for the Park community members as well. But it has been such a game changer. Jesse and Paul and everybody on this call, we've been touching about all these different models. The fact that the routing aspect, and I think, Paul, you mentioned Ramp with their router and a couple other companies to be able to pick which models for the task. I'll be honest, I had Fable up and I was just doing some dumb tasks with Fable open. I'm like, why did I just spend those tokens on that stupid, ask or prompt or whatever it was? But now with like Buzz and some other platforms, you can now use them to figure out the model modifier, if you will, based on the agents. So it's been an absolute game changer for us, and I can expand on that more. But maybe, Steve, do you want to just explain a little bit more about Buzz and how that's been impacting many businesses?
I've been using it since April. It was just announced last week. So I've had quite a bit of experience with it. It's a multiplayer, both human and agent experience. You can think of it as like AI native Slack or Discord. Another good analogy, I think, is look what Google Docs did to Microsoft Word in terms of Google Docs brought collaboration to word processing. And then look at Figma. Figma brought collaboration to design. Buzz is very much a collaboration tool. If you're just using it solo by yourself with no one else in the community, then you might as well just use like Goose or Claude Code or Codex or OpenCode or what have you. It's about collaboration. And the collaboration is powerful. I've seen very compelling experiences where you put someone who's traditionally a PM role combined with someone who's traditionally a developer. So someone with expertise at a code base or a technical topic. And the two of them working together along with their agents, because Buzz is a bring your own agent platform, can really move with high velocity and build very quickly. And it's just much more powerful combining a PM with an engineer or a designer and engineer or any combinations of those. Because we are seeing a convergence in those roles, but there's still people with skill sets in each of those. You're not going to replace very technical developers. You still need that expertise, that judgment, and steering and direction of the agents, even if the agents are producing the code. You still need PMs with product sense. You still need designers with design sense. So bringing them together is amazing. And then the benefit compounds over time because what Block discovered is that when you're using a disparate set of tools, that information and data is segregated and not all available in one place. With Buzz, it's based on Nostr. All of the data is available to the agents and the people using that Buzz community over time. So you get this like rich history of information that you don't get if you're using some combination of like Discord and GitHub and Signal and all these different tools. So I think the people will realize that value over time. You're not going to see that on day one, but over time you're going to see that value. And so I think it's an absolute no-brainer for open source projects to adopt Buzz immediately, because I don't know of a single open source project that is happy with their current tool. Slack's horrible for open source because the business model doesn't accommodate it. Discord, I'd say, at least from the 30 plus projects I'm involved with, most are Discord. No one likes Discord. And then you mentioned Mattermost, and there's Zulip, and there's like a zillion different tools. No one's happy with any of them. So it's low switching costs. You bring in the collaboration and intelligence, and I think it's a no-brainer. And then corporations, I think, will adopt it too. That'll be a longer sales cycle per se, but I think corporations will adopt it as well.
Yeah, I don't know if Paul, you wanted to add on to that, but I think on the corporation side, I would actually think that the switching cost is so low, and then those agentic traces to say, I want to have my own world memory stored here, within my group, and I don't trust the Slacks and all these other folks. Let me just bring it over here, and let's move pretty fast, especially for smaller and more nimble teams. Like ours is this is the best time to be alive, if you will.
I mentioned Nostr too. So like someone like Rod, your team, if you want to choose Block as the host for that Nostr relay, that's the default onboarding experience. It's super simple. But if you don't want Block to have that data and you want to have that data, you just run your own Nostr relay. Right?
And we do. Yeah. And I'm going to pass it to Paul. And I'm just going to, the quick tangent, and I'm not being self-deprecating. I am not the smartest person in the world. I have a GitHub profile. I have submitted my first PRs ever in this last week. PR equals pull request. I woke up this morning and I'm like, wait, why do I have a notification on my GitHub app? Someone was referencing me and they're like, oh, Roudi, already submitted this request, blah, 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 and then referenced all my stuff. I'm like, I am so way over my skis, but it was so exhilarating. And it's like, to Steve's point, the PM role with the engineer, all of these folks can just have an agent and work together. And I tell my team, just work in the general channel, transparent everything, and just put it out there so we can all collaborate together and learn together. So I don't know, Paul, if you wanted to expand there.
Yeah, I just would throw in one historical note, because Buzz obviously is a huge step toward, I think the interesting part about Buzz to me is also the open standards it's based on, like you're talking about, Steve, but also the ability to link that to payments as well, I think is important. I don't know if that's something that is touted, but if you look back at a historical note, why is Slack popular? What was big about Slack? I remember when it first came out, I think it was Stuart Butterfield or something like that. But Slack was the first time we ever saw communication channels between organizations. You would have a Slack channel with your customer. And I remember seeing that going, this is bizarre. So this is blurring the lines of what the corporate, membrane is, And so what Buzz does possibly in the future is blur the lines between not just communication, but incentive transfer in the form of payments or micropayments. So the membrane is not just knowledge transfer or communication, but it could end up being economic transfer at a small or large level, but high frequency. And I think if we start to look at, I think everyone's talking about Ronald Coase these days, but the whole, what is the theory of the firm? What is a firm? It's around friction of payments and friction of communication. If things like Buzz change the nature of the friction of payments and communication, which our company tries to be at the heart of, us, we were kind of silent about this, but working on this for years and years now, is how do you take the market for cognition and basically redesign how humans collaborate, whether in a company or not? If you just start from scratch and you say, have we solved company-shaped problems? That seems to be what we've done so far. So Bitcoin, I would say, is not a company-shaped problem. Bitcoin was outside of what you would invest in or talk to your friends about. It was like anti all of that. And so I think that the most interesting ideas for our era are the ones that are not company shaped entirely. I don't know what that means for the future, but and then tools like Buzz and Nostr and Lightning and everything we're talking about really is redefining that concept of friction and human coordination. And so, Lorenzo, your point about being friction, I think one huge thing, all these lessons we know about the privacy versus friction trade-off, that equation has completely changed. So I prefer privacy. It used to be a pain in the ass. Now it's been grouped with this AI UI UX change where suddenly AI makes everything easy and privacy got swept along with it. I'm all for it. But for the first time, I think that people in this development community can actually win where the better experience is actually the private one. There's very few opportunities like this out there and in history. And so by whatever means necessary, I would say that our community has to be pretty motivated to do it at this moment. And I think, Jesse, to your point about the personal choice, I think that the corporations being so aware and choosing the open model will pull through the consumer side too. Companies will spend huge money and we will benefit from the privacy standpoint because they recognize the existential threat to their whole business. When you look at your business and you just go, is my business going to survive AGI? And most people know, you have a future. You have some friction that's going to take a while to flush you out of the economic system. That's not a very comfortable place for a CEO to be. And so they will look for any way possible to hold on to the moment, hold on to their agentic traces for long enough to figure out a way out. Because otherwise you will just get mowed over by the foundation models. So,
and I think we're seeing a redefinition of what the firm is. Paul, you had mentioned like a firm as an intelligence system, where we think about what is the AI native organization look like. I think we're in a process of discovery right now of figuring out the shapes and contours of what that is. And also, what is the capital structure of an AI native organization? Is it's just its cash and its real estate and its factories? The AI native organization, its capital is its GPUs, its ownership over its own intelligence, its ownership over its knowledge systems, its intelligence systems, its agentic hierarchies. So this stack of having your own GPUs, your own open weight models, your own fine tuning that you're doing on the corporate data, your buzz systems for agents and humans to interact, your knowledge systems. This is the essential value of the organization of the future. And if you don't own that, then you are going to get outcompeted. You're not going to have a differentiator, or your token provider is just going to extract all the alpha from your business.
Going back to Buzz and Bitcoin, I think that's an example of convergence that we started talking about today. And Paul, if you remember, last time we saw each other here at PB, we talked about peer-to-peer training and peer-to-peer inference. Block has a project called Mesh LLM, which is now part of Spiral. It's a peer-to-peer inference project, and it's been integrated into Buzz. So from Buzz, you can not only choose, an Anthropic or OpenAI agent and model, or you can use Goose as your agent and use any open model. You can also use shared compute, where you're running an open model, but not locally on your own computer. It can be on other people's computers, and the work is divided among those computers. Today, though, there's no payment mechanism built into that. So it right now, it works great if you're a hobbyist and you're just willing to donate some of your compute for the cause and for the experimentation, or it can work well today at a corporation where you're only you own you have 5,000 employees, 5,000 computers. You can farm that compute out to those. But in the future, you can imagine a public network where you need financial incentives for why am I providing this compute? And well, what's a native internet money that we could add to that? Bitcoin payments. And so I think we're going to see that happen. And then within
big time,
other places in Buzz. One of the folks on Spiral vibe coded in a Bitcoin wallet experience and developed 10 different, a petri dish of experiments, 10 different features for payments within Buzz. Last week when it was launched, several other Bitcoiners vibe coded in Bitcoin wallets and stuff. So I think that's inevitable. We're going to see that. It ranges from the basics that you'd expect, where you can zap someone's post or tip someone. But some of the other experiments were I can create a channel within Buzz, and anyone who joins, I have a faucet. So anyone who joins not only automatically has a Bitcoin wallet, but they also automatically get a little bit of Bitcoin that I funded, just to reduce the friction for everyone else. Or the opposite. I create a channel and you have to pay Bitcoin to join the channel. There's just so many different combinations of experiments. I don't know which ones are going to become popular beyond just ideological Bitcoiners, but I think there's going to be dozens, if not hundreds, of experiments in not only Buzz but other applications, and we're gonna find killer apps and killer features where Bitcoin payments are what people choose.
Well, I'll just throw out one more seg, not to monopolize on the enterprise side, but I think that one thing you're seeing is a lot of narrow models trained by enterprises. So people for a while viewed models as something that those guys do, the big companies, the foundation models, and everyone's realizing now with products like Goose or Ramp Inspect or Harvey's thing that they have, I don't remember the name, but everyone's building their own system internally, and they're seeing that, I'm doing the same thing over and over again with an agent burning tokens. I can actually train a narrow model. It's not that hard. I can label it internally. Jason Lemkin, who's on a podcast, just figured this out. He's like, wait a minute, why am I rediscovering the wheel every day? I can just train a model on how to do this exactly the way I want to do it. We train a model, it's $60 to train a model that does something very narrow for you. And then you just get that mileage all day. So in your model, Steve, it would be, I will pay labelers over Buzz or Nostr or Lightning or whatever. We use Lightning for this, L402s. I will pay someone like a stack worker to label my data. I can actually remove personal identifying information before it goes out. So I'm actually sending stuff out to the public that I don't care because the names have all been replaced. So you can get distributed training data. Then you can get distributed inference through the model that you're talking about through Mesh LLM. And then you can get microtasks out there. Then you can do bounties for programming. The whole idea that the stuff that used to live inside of your corporation and limit your growth is now just blown to pieces. And what holds that together are open standards and open borderless money. Your agent will not say, I want to have this person in the US do this microtask. It'll say, I will go get it done as quickly, at high quality, and lowest cost as possible. And it will break through walls to do that. And even though it's inconvenient, it will find a way because it's just better. But it's not you doing the work. This is the Nick Szabo article from decades ago. Micropayments has too much mental load for people to take on. He was correct. But now there is no mental load. So now you can't view the old world in the old way. So you have to redo your mental models. So I think this is just incredible. So anyway, I'll shut up from there. But just to plant that seed for what can happen in the future.
Can I just ask a question? And it's more of a clarifying question. So when you say open models, you mean open weight models, open source models? Because there is a difference, right? And I'd love to know more about that.
So I mean, today what we have, the best of what we have today is open weight. But I think I suspect all of us would agree that's not the full definition of what open source models could be.
Right.
And a fuller definition is that the inputs are known to the training and that they're independently verifiable. Like a somewhat decent analogy would be open source software. You can have open source software, but then you can have reproducible builds where, like, Jesse develops software, he open sources it. I can then take that software, build it myself, and compare the binary produced from my build to his and make sure they're the same. I mean, the ideal outcome with AI is that someone could take, all the inputs to training are known or are published, and then any of us could independently verify that. Now that's challenging. First of all, no one is providing all that information. I think NVIDIA with their Nematron models publishes a lot of the input, but I don't think all of the input. And most other models, I don't think publish anything at all. And then even if they do publish it, the cost of us reproducing it would be immense. So it's not practical. Like with open source software, reproducible build, any of us could do that on our own personal computer. So I think open weight models are an enormous win and give you substantial value over non-open weight. But as we look to the future, it'd be even better if the inputs are open as well.
On this topic, I think if you look at Open Router, I think like 60% of the models that are the tokens that are used are from Chinese created open weight models. How do you guys think about that in terms of I don't know, also like potential bans from the government, like data breach, like even if you run it kind of on-prem, do we need like US created open weight models, which for now haven't been really successful? Like Meta tried, I think. I don't know if Google as well. Yeah,
I think the United States, it's really important that the United States leads in open weight models and open source AI. And it is really, I think, the only way to think about AI as an expression of American political values and human rights and freedom and liberty. Like, this should be our thing. And so I think there's a strange irony that we're seeing China be the leader here, although I think more and more entities in the US are kind of waking up to the importance of this. But, on the other hand, if an equation is developed in China, the equation is still valid in the United States. And the weights are math, the software is code. And once you have those weights, you can evaluate those weights. You can see how they perform under a variety of conditions, and you can change the weights. So, if a Chinese model doesn't want to talk to you about Tiananmen Square, you can fine tune the model and have it happily talk to you about it. So I think the danger is somewhat limited in terms of thinking that just because the weights originated in a way that we don't know how it was generated, that there's no safe way to use it and put in controls and kind of make it your own. But I think the political dimension of this is very concerning, because there are legitimate safety concerns. On the other hand, it's very convenient that safety can be used as a way of keeping out competition. And if I have an AI that is more powerful than my competitor's AI, that is a huge advantage. And so what we see today is that there's an inner circle of elite companies that get first access to the most powerful AI, and they get to use it in an unrestricted way. So everybody else, if they're trying to keep themselves from getting hacked or do a cybersecurity review, they can't use the most powerful model. But the bigger companies and the bigger players can. So there's a conflict of interest there where they could have a reason to hold it back from everybody else, distinct from safety, but it can be done in the name of safety.
Right.
And now the executive branch has this amazing lever where, without any transparent process, they can decide on a whim who's on the ban list and who isn't. And when you look at the concessions Anthropic had to make to get off the export ban list, they had to make sure that the government gets first access to the models, that the government has say on who gets access. And so if you're a large corporation, you can't afford to be on the White House's bad list and not get access to this AI. And they can use that as leverage and influence over any corporation or any government, because it's also a geopolitical issue. So that's where we have to be very careful about making sure that we don't end up needing safety from safety. The safety apparatus and the security apparatus ends up becoming a greater danger than allowing these things to be developed freely and openly and in a decentralized way.
A concrete example of what Jesse's talking about, bringing it within Bitcoin, is like using the most powerful cyber models to do a security scan against Bitcoin Core project. So obviously, if we care about the Bitcoin network being resilient and secure, we're in a situation where all software is quite vulnerable right now, because there can be vulnerabilities and bugs that have been present for years or decades that are being exposed now by AI tools. So there's like this backlog of vulnerabilities. The good news, I think, is that we can use these tools to clear the backlog, fix those bugs, and then moving forward, it should never grow. It'll always be a cat and mouse game, but it won't grow to as big of list of vulnerabilities today. But what we've discovered is, like when Mythos was first announced in Project Glasswing, that was only available to certain companies. So we did outreach to Anthropic, and we also did outreach to other major, frontier model providers, discussing like, can the Bitcoin Core developers get access to these models, or can at least the handful of developers who've been chosen by the project to be in the security list, or like the point of contact for security. And we weren't successful in doing that. And I do understand from the perspective of the company, like who are these people? They might have the perception and reality of like, being sort of anti-state or separation of money from state. So giving them models might seem very risky to them, but it does present a situation where a set of companies or people have access to this, some of which who could attack the network, and the developers trying to protect the network don't have access to that. So one thing Spiral did was launch Project Loop, L-O-U-P-E, a few months ago, doing, not only is it an apparatus to do AI security scans, but we also do it as a service to other open source projects. And to the degree that the contributors to Loop can get access to the more powerful cyber models, that will help open source projects like Bitcoin Core.
I love and hate my job as the co-host with Cathie and Lorenzo on this podcast, because like this, it goes 70 minutes or up, and we got to close here. So I do want to highlight your guys' work as well as close with Cathie and Lorenzo. Paul, if you're comfortable talking about Hive, and Jesse, you're talking about your project. And maybe Steve, maybe like 60 seconds. You mentioned the Open Source AI Summit. Maybe just like with the audience, what that's all about and how people can request an invitation.
Yeah, so you can go to the website opensourceaisummit.org, and what it's about is going to be, it's what we just talked about today, but it's a 2-day event. So if you like the topics we talked about today around, open source AI, local AI, privacy, also touching on philosophy and government, et cetera, this would be a great summit for you. We're looking for both speakers and attendees. So if you go to that website, you'll learn more.
And if you're watching this on YouTube, the space that they have, look out Steve's window right now. It is beautiful, and it's such an awesome space. So I highly recommend that. Paul, on Hive, as well as what you're working on.
Yeah, so we're working on, hopefully by the time this comes out, we're actually doing some announcements next week. So we work on a code automation and intelligence platform for groups of people. As I've touched on today, we've been working on this for years, and all the pieces are coming together. So it's pretty exciting. Our big thing was we have recursion on our entire system, where the system is able to legibly improve itself, which is pretty exciting. And so people talk about recursion for models. We don't care so much about that. We care more about the entire system around it. So the agents, the memory, code generation, it really should be able to go down that process. So the beginning stages of it, it's not, some science fiction project, but it's all coming together, which feels great. So
who's the customer for this, by the way?
So it's really the partners who are doing AI implementations in enterprise. That's not our business. We're going to end up partnering with the people who are doing these AI roll-ups. Any company that's trying to basically follow and block, split, step, and ramp. I mean, a lot of people want that type of system, and not many people know how to implement it. So we'll be releasing our open source stuff, and we'll see how it all goes. So we're excited.
Dude, massive congrats, Paul. I know you and the team have been working really hard on it.
Yeah.
Jessica, where can I sign up so I can put all my intelligence in your trust and my money and everything? All the things.
Yeah. Well, the great thing about our system is you don't actually have to trust it.
Because
we don't have your data, because the whole stack is open source and verifiable, because we're doing it the Bitcoin way. So my company is Vora. You can learn more about us at Vora.io. But we're building the world's most loyal AI. And we're doing that by taking the techniques we honed in Bitcoin self-custody and cryptography and security, and marrying them up with the latest in academic research when it comes to defending against prompt injection and agentic security. And we're selling a consumer home appliance where you can run your own AI on your own hardware, and have an integrated hardware wallet in the appliance for agentic payments and to enforce the security boundaries. And it's super easy to use. It's very intuitive. You just plug it in, pair the mobile app, and you're up and running. And then we're building these incredible experiences on top of that loyalty and that privacy that you get with our product.
Is it launched now? Like you can go buy it right now?
We just opened up pre-orders a couple weeks ago. So you can lock in like a special discount price that we're offering. And we're going to open up a Kickstarter in October.
Rock and roll, man. Massive congrats. And I'm going to just shill Lorenzo and Cathie before I pass it to them. The newsletter I subscribe to, by the way, just is like not only great insights, but like you guys are just deal after deal after deal announcing. It's been really cool to see, and massive congrats to y'all as well, especially across the AI, energy, autonomous, all these spaces. It's unbelievable.
I just want to reflect on one other thing. First of all, what I said about you, Rod, at the beginning, it's because you're usually really tanned and, and it's just, I can just tell you've been vibe coding. It's clear. But the other thing I wanted to mention was, do you remember when we had roast beef on? It was the first time we talked about the convergence between Bitcoin and AI. And oh man, we were trying to contort, and we have come so far. Totally. It is so fascinating and wonderful to have been doing this with you as long as we have, and to have that kind of experience. And so, I always learn so much from Bitcoin Brainstorm.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Lorenzo, as well. I'll maybe, Lorenzo, is there anything you would like to close with as well? Okay, rock and roll. And so to Steve's point about like these podcasts, these spaces, these conversations, it's so awesome to have out in the open, especially in the online format. What Steve's doing at Presidio Bitcoin and these summits as well, I'll maybe do a shameless plug. October 5th and 6th, Imagine If is coming back. Cathie, your support coming back to Nashville again. We're going to bring all these folks across the convergence of AI, energy, and Bitcoin back to the Fisher Center. So we'll put in the show notes as well. We would love for anyone to request an invitation, and we'd love to see you there. We will publish everything. The one thing I will publish, and I'll close with, is Steve, I'm going to first get dibs on your channel where it gives me Bitcoin, and then we'll post the link where you get the Bitcoin in the show notes for the audience members. How about that? And maybe you could split some off for me. But seriously, everybody, thank you so much. This has just been unbelievable.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
ARK believes that the information presented is accurate and was obtained from sources that ARK believes to be reliable. However, ARK does not guarantee the accuracy or completeness of any information, and such information may be subject to change without notice from ARK. Historical results are not indications of future results. Certain of the statements contained in this podcast may be statements of future expectations and other forward-looking statements that are based on ARK's current views and assumptions, and involve known and unknown risks and uncertainties that could cause actual results, performance, or events to differ materially from those expressed or implied in such statements.
Bitcoin is a relatively new asset class, and the market for Bitcoin is subject to rapid changes and uncertainty. Bitcoin is largely unregulated, and Bitcoin investments may be more susceptible to fraud and manipulation than more regulated investments. Bitcoin is subject to unique and substantial risks, including significant price volatility, lack of liquidity, and theft. Bitcoin is subject to rapid price swings, including as a result of actions and statements by influencers and the media, changes in the supply and demand of Bitcoin, and other factors. There is no assurance that Bitcoin will maintain its value over the long term. ARK strongly encourages any investor considering an investment in Bitcoin or any other digital asset to consult with a financial professional before investing. All statements made regarding Bitcoin are strictly beliefs and points of view held by ARK and/or podcast guests and are not recommendations by ARK to buy, sell, or hold Bitcoin. Historical results are not indications of future results.